Hello, it's me, a cat, and I wanted to talk to you today about something that is near and dear to my heart. My Ishtadeva. For those of you who don't know, an Ishtadeva is like a cherished deity, like because you know how in like Hinduism there's like a lot of different gods. Well, some people have a favorite god, and that is are like their favorite aspect of God. I mean, in this case, this is just the favorite aspect of God I have, and I have this lady here. Here, this is Kali. She's really cool and stuff. But I was going to talk a little bit about my journey as to why. Excuse me. I keep having like oogie boogie loogies in my throat, and I think I need to spit like this. Okay, we're better now. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about why she's my Ishtadeva and the little journey I took to get to this point. Well, we're going to start right here with a pair of other ladies. So, generally speaking, there was a long period of my life where I didn't really believe in any sort of gods, and then I found that the longer I was living, I had more and more, well, we'll say odd encounters of a spiritual type. I frequently really wanted to like connect to a deity of some sort. And I just found that like the Abrahamic deities or deity was just not really something I felt very much attachment to. Part of this was because after I left Islam, well, Islam kind of left a bad taste in my mouth for a while, where I just couldn't really see fit to embrace the idea of the God that was present in that faith. I had a lot of different questions that I really didn't feel like were answered very well. I also found that like reading the Bible and stuff like that, like I could see that there was a decent number of lessons in the Bible that I rather liked, but there was also just like a lot of like crazy bad things that just seemed odd to me, like if a deity is loving or is a deity that you would worship that would be like there's a part where like God has like a laser throne on the ark. And I mean that's kind of cool, but why would God need a laser throne, you know? Like do you want a laser throne? I mean, I kind of want a laser throne. I mean, I think it would be kind of cool, but like, you know, seemed like an odd choice to me. Anyway, so I decided to try investigating different things, and then after I discovered Buddhism, I found like a lifestyle or with like a lot of teachings that I found very useful, but I still felt kind of like I wanted some devotional aspect of myself or in my life. So, I kind of started looking around. It didn't make much sense to me to necessarily pray to the Buddha. There were a couple times when I tried praying to like the Amida Buddha, but that was kind of, I don't know, it just always kind of felt to me like that betrayed what I knew about early Buddhism and like the Buddha representation. Like it doesn't seem to me like the Buddha is necessarily a deity. Not to mention there were a couple of like minor things I disagreed with the Buddha on. So, you know, I was like, I'll look around. I tried looking at like different pagan deities. That's why there's a picture of Athena there. I I have a weird relationship with the neo-pagan community in that I think a lot of it is basically just made up. Like I don't mean like you can't believe this stuff, but a lot of it like if you were trying to trace it back to like the original like pagan worshippers, like if you're talking about like the Germanic peoples or other things. Like, I don't feel like we know as much as would maybe make it viable to truly worship like they used to worship. But in particular, what I found investigating a lot of these guys is that they just kind of seem to make stuff up and it would just be like going based on what their feelings were. Now, I personally am very fine with that because I think that the spiritual dimensions of things, like just in general, like spirituality is much more fluid and there's a lot more to it. You can't just like be like, oh, this is just the way things is and this is the way things always is will be, you know. What doth life? I don't really think that's the way it works. I think it's much more fluid. However, if you're going to worship a historical pantheon, it seems odd to me when you just like kind of throw random stuff in there. I mean, for instance, like, even though there were certain Greek deities I liked, Athena was one I was always somewhat attracted to. I mean, I have to admit that, like, the Greek pantheon just doesn't really seem like a bunch of, like, pleasant dudes and dudettes. Like, like Apollo would be, like, in love with a lot of people, and that's kind of cool and stuff, but then, like, you get into, like, what happens to all of his lovers, and they like all die tragic deaths. So I was like, I don't know. Like the only two Greek deities that I found even remotely appealing were like Athena and Apollo. Those were the two. But like the more I read about the two of them, I just didn't really know like what I would gain out of that, out of like trying for these two. So I tried a couple of times doing like the little pagan rituals that I could like research and find out stuff about just to see like if they did anything for me. And I'm just gonna be perfectly honest, just absolutely nothing. I followed these rituals like to a T, and I just didn't feel anything. I didn't feel any connected. I just kind of felt like I had wasted because I offered some wine, and I was like, this just doesn't really feel like. It just seems odd to me. I don't know. Felt absolutely nothing. Other people I talked to describe like having these elaborate experiences with their deities, and they also told me that like if this was the path for me, eventually I would get something that would really connect me with one of them. I'm like, okay, fine. Anyway, but I was getting absolutely nowhere with the Greek deities, and even though I enjoy a lot of the stories of the Greek deities, they just didn't really appeal to me. Like they just didn't even seem like people I'd want to talk to, like you kind of hope that if you were like gonna embrace certain deities, they would at least be cool enough that you could like walk up to them on the street and be like, "Oh, hey." It's not like one of those awkward things where it's like someone you know at school and like you're with your mom or something in like a grocery store and you walk past each other, you go, hey," and then like because there's just something weird about that interaction outside of school, especially if you don't actually like that person very much. It kind of felt like that where I was just like, "Oh, look, it's Athena." I mean, like, she's cool and stuff in a variety of ways, but she's also just like, I don't know, just not that. Excuse me, I adjusted myself in my chair. She's just not that interesting on a spiritual level to me. Where it's like she's neat to read about, but like I felt absolutely nothing. However, I did realize pretty early on as I was messing around with this that I had an attraction much more to female deities than I did to male deities. Athena was ultimately much more interesting to me of the pair, and although I did like Apollo, he was like the only male god I had like any interest in or desire to like research at all, like and more in depth. But I kind of just found that it just wasn't working. So then I tried something a little different. The Norse myths and the Germanic myths were always some of my favorite. Um, I really like uh a lot of the stories of Thor, and I like the stories of Odin and Woden, big old one-eye man. I thought he was pretty cool. Um, I decided to keep looking into that, and I just once again just found that these gods were, while they were interesting, just didn't really seem to offer me anything on a spiritual level. Where like I would try praying to them in varieties of different ways. I would try different rituals and things like that just to see if I got anything. And ultimately, I just never really got much of anything. And I was like, well, maybe this is just altogether not really that for me, you know? Like, because in like really deep states of meditation, I had at several points kind of like had very strange experiences. And this is around the time that was first starting. And I was like, well, maybe this is indicating I'm on the right path. But like, I would sit there and like really like engage in certain experiences, these like kind of trance-like experiences. And I tended to find that a lot of the imagery involved like just didn't really mesh with any of these deities in a way that made sense. Like fire was very often very prevalent, but like there was a lot of burning and there was a lot of like dead things like skeletons and stuff like that, and various other creatures that would like sometimes be seen, and sometimes I would see them doing things. But when I tried to compare this to what I knew about like Norse like paganism, or like, you know, Hellenistic paganism or anything like that, like it never really seemed to fit. The only deity that I felt any connection at all towards was Freya. And this was kind of weird because like this was the first time like when I prayed directly to a specific deity, I felt like I got anything like remotely approaching a response. And if I would meditate and think about Freya, like it seemed to at least kind of fit with the general nature theme of a lot of the things I was seeing when I was going into deeper trances and stuff like that. So that seemed kind of neat. Although I have to admit, my inner, somewhat skeptical self was like, this still doesn't really seem like it fits. It just seems like she's kind of there and she's kind of cool, but like I didn't really feel that strong of a connection. I even briefly considered like, well, what if you just took fictional deities, like deities from various fiction and different things like that, and then just like applied them to the things you were saying. That's part of the reason why there's this lady here on the other side. That's actually supposed to be a war priest of Myrmidia from the Warhammer series. I've always liked her. She's like been one of my favorite deities in the Warhammer fantasy um gods and pantheons and stuff like that. I kind of tried doing that, but it just, well, I don't know. It just didn't really seem to fit still. There was definitely like a lot of this imagery of strange things and like death and undeath and fire and like all this other strange stuff. But like it just did not really seem to be fitting with anything I knew of these particular deities. Now, I tried doing approaching this in a variety of ways as well, I should say. I tried approaching this by like going and finding like the most traditional, classic rituals we knew about, like the rituals that were at least comparable to the rituals that we believe these people, like the Norse people and the ancient Greek people, would perform. I would try doing that. I would try something much less formal as well. I would try just, you know, just kind of like bending knee and praying, or even just like standing up with my arms outstretched and praying, and just still really nothing. Um, Now, what I will say, and this might sound weird if you're not really into this kind of stuff, or if you've never had experiences with this kind of stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean that these deities were not like real, or that they weren't like forces out there, right? What this just could just mean is that they're just not connected to you in a major way. And I was just like, okay, that's perfectly fine. I certainly felt like there was still something out there, and there was still something definitely calling to me in all my strangeness and all my weird trance-like visions and all of these things. I would even like sometimes write down like the things I would see when I was like really sitting down. I briefly considered just like starting my own religion, and I still think that well, I should probably do that because that would be cool and fun. And then I could like have a religion that's all like, hey, take care of each other, don't be rude and mean, and you know, embrace diversity and all kinds of neat stuff, I guess. But you know, I don't know. Anyway, eventually, and this is partially in connection to the Buddhism thing, I would investigate more like Indian stuff, like more like Hinduism. What would end up happening really is that I would read the Bhagavad-Gita, and something very strange happened to me. Where the first time I read the Bhagavad-Gita, and this is a repeat from, or this is a refresher from the other time I was telling stories about this kind of stuff. But the first time I read the Bhagavad-Gita, just didn't really get very much out of it. Read it a couple times, just like, there's some neat stuff in here, but not that much for me. But this time when I read it, I don't know if it was just because I was ready or like in the right space of mind or what, but the story just really affected me and just really made sense and just really clicked. So then I decided, well, I was going to try something different. I decided that I was going to try praying to Krishna. And I have to admit that that was the first time I really felt like during this whole journey, I felt like I was getting some kind of connection and something there. I would sit and I would do a lot of chanting, and I would make little offerings to these statues of Krishna I got. And I just it was weird. I just really felt like really connected, and I felt like really at peace when I was doing these sorts of things. I said, okay, cool. Maybe this is the path for me then. And over time, I would do more research into different deities, and I would start. I bought like I have a little shrine that has various different deities in it. There's this lady here, by the way. This picture is Durga. Once again, I felt a very strong connection to certain female deities. The first time I would hear about Durga, and the first time I did a little chant slash prayer to Durga, I felt like there was this big connection there, and I really liked it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy a statue of Durga. Durga is actually like the largest statue I have. It's like actually way bigger than all the other statues. It's kind of fun. Um, but I also often felt a connection to Lord Shiva. Um, so I got a statue of Lord Shiva. Um, I also ended up getting a statue of Kali. Now, Kali was a statue I got because I had briefly felt some kind of connection when I was reading about Tantra and when I was learning more about Tantra and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just decided I would give it a shot. So I was doing these various different prayers and kind of like praying between these several different deities. I, of course, recognize that they are all necessarily part of like the same greater divinity, and I still think that even like those other pagan deities are actually part of the same grander divinity. But I decided to like continue to embrace this and to continue to pray and stuff like that. However, during this time, something that was interesting to me looking back on it was that I never really prayed to Kali. I never really engaged with Kali very much at first. I was always engaging with Durga and like various different devis. Like there was a little bit of for like Lakshmi, although I never had like a statue of Lakshmi, and stuff like that. But I was messing around with these different deities, trying out different practices and excuse me, for different practices and stuff like that. But one day I just decided, you know what? Let's go for Kali today. So what I did was I printed out um several pictures. This was actually before I kind of messed up telling this because this is actually before I had a statue of Kali. But I printed out several pictures of Kali and I just like set them down in my meditation area and I just really focused and really chanted and was like really paying attention. And it was really weird. What ended up happening was I just kind of felt like I had been like gripped. Like just the grip. Like something had wrapped its arms around me or its hands around me to pick me up and just kind of push me onto the ground. And the next thing I knew, like I felt like I was kind of like I felt like someone had their hand around my neck and was like squeezing, and it was like crazy. Not like crazy hard, but like, hard enough to definitely be noticeable. And like there was just this very, very strange experience that I had there. And that was the first like time I felt like a physical presence to this stuff. And it was like this presence commanded me to take like a 2 week break basically from all kinds of recreational substances, among other things. I believe I said that in the other video. But that, along with just the general feeling of the whole thing afterwards, would get me to realize that Kali was the main deity that maybe I should pay attention to. Although you might notice here, when I show you this picture of Kali, she's kind of scary. Or she kind of looks scary, like that's a demon guy's head, and it's bleeding into a bowl, and she has like an arm skirt, and like she's got that cute little tongue sticking out, and she's also got all those heads and things, and she's standing on Lord Shiva there. Kind of scary. But I found the more I did research that she was actually kind of perfect for what I was looking for because, well, I've often had an attraction to like the dark things, like darkness and other kind of spooky things. Um, and the more I would focus on her and the more I would, kind of go into deep states of meditation, like the more these visions I was having were making more sense. Like all these images of death and rebirth and like fire and things like that all kind of relate to Kali. And Kali is, like she's she's not just like this scary deity. She's like, Mother Kali. She's like very like she looks frightening, but the more you get into it and the more you learn about her and the closer you get to her, the more it's like Mother Kali. She's loving and she has all these like she's not worried about like purity. She's not worried about like these silly little rules that like like when I was first learning about Hinduism or like really delving into it, one of the things that kept bothering me was all these little tiny rules, these rules that just seemed to me like they didn't really make much of a difference. And Kali wasn't worried about those rules. She was worried about like these deeper truths and understanding like the nature of the universe. Like she is this personification of time. She like overcomes all things because she is like time herself, like 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 and you think about it, and it's not just that she's a destroyer, she's also like this grand preserver, this great teacher. And like boom, really in there, it just made perfect sense all of a sudden. Like so much of the things I had been experiencing and this desire for worship just make perfect sense when I got back to Kali. She made sense out of all of this other like weird disparate stuff I was going through. I did also think it was funny that ultimately it would be a goddess, because once again, just like I love me some goddess. Not like in a creepy pervy way, but like I don't know, I just like goddesses. But anyway, I just really started to embrace it. And then I really started to delve into Tantra and very specifically Kashmiri Shaivism. And the more you learn about these kind of like they might strike you as weird esoteric truths because you just go and kind of go like, huh, that's weird at first. Like some of the stuff you hear about like like Kali being present and everything, but she's like she goes beyond all these rules and things like that, and she is like the universe itself. She is the universal mother. Like at first you're like, huh, that's kind of weird, because why does the universal mother look scary? But the scary thing is just an appearance that's just there on the surface level. The more you delve into it, the more sense it makes. And the more I learned about Tantrism and the more I learned about like the representation of like the different kind of like energies in the universe. And I have to admit there's a lot of this that I still don't really 100% know if I believe. All I can say is that I have had quite a few different experiences praying to Kali. I've had quite a few different like very often emotional experiences. Like there was this one time when I was just like sitting and just like in kind of a bad state of mind at the moment, and then like the longer I was sitting and focusing on it, it just all of a sudden like I like offered up my negative emotions to Kali and they were just like gone, and I just felt like such tremendous relief. And then there's also been these times when like I just think about like how she looks past all of these very surface level things that are like wrong with us, or like all these surface level impurities, and moves past them, and she like kind of shows us this greater truth beyond all these things. It's so amazing, and I think I need to like do a video where I talk more about individual things that have really stuck out to me. But like yeah, this like she kind of like showed that it was okay to be kind of interested in like the dark spooky things. Like it was okay to like my weird Lovecraftian nonsense and stuff like that. And that wasn't really something I was like, oh my god, it's not okay to like that. But at the same time, it's interesting to see the way that relates, and like all these images of fire and rebirth and stuff like that. And it's like realizing that like we are ultimately all like a part of this great divine process and this great circle. It's so very beautiful in a way. And like you might look at an image like this and be like, wow, that's kind of horrifying. But like I look at it now and I think, wow, that's just like on so many levels so beautiful. Like the wild, untamed femininity she has, as well like just the wild hair and like the strength she represents is just magnificent. And like I think also think back on different experiences I've had where like I'll just be sitting and like eventually you just kind of approach her and like you can end up like having these like very candid conversations, or like you can go into very deep states, like just focusing on Kali, like like ecstatic states too. Sometimes you just see that there's like this deeper truth there, this deeper truth about like, we don't need to focus on like the purity of things so much, and like ultimately, like as an example, like the water of the Ganges is like the same as like a pile of shit, man. Like it doesn't matter. Like we are so focused on these surface level things that we frequently miss like the deeper truths and meanings behind stuff. I don't know, just something about her is just so very wonderful, and that's ended why she's like my Ishtadeva. And the thing that's funny is, if I look at the little statues I have, even though like praying to Lady Kali and like Lord Shiva are now like the two I do most often because I've gotten really into Kashmiri Shaivism and stuff like that, as well as like understanding these weird kind of esoteric visions I've had, and like engaging more and more in like the mystical traditions and mystical practice. Uh, Lord Shiva and Lady Kali are still like have the tiniest statues. Like I still have this gigantic statue of Durga. And don't get me wrong, I still occasionally pray to Durga and Krishna and stuff like that. I haven't completely like abandoned that stuff, and I find that incorporating all kinds of stuff from these different sects really helps out and helps create a more coherent worldview. I mean, I think that ultimately what we should all be doing is looking for our own truth. And I think that part of what I've learned is that truth shows up in a myriad of forms, right? Like, we don't all need to be worried about people praying to the exact same version of God or the same goddess or whatever. It's more about trying to live in harmony with one another and trying to discover our own personal inner truths. I think that the divine is so very complex that it kind of lets each of us approach the truth in our own way. And I don't know, it's just truly very beautiful and very liberating, and I have to admit I'm very happy about it. But I don't know. I was just thinking about this kind of stuff and I just wanted to share. But yes, that's why Kali is my Ishtadeva. That is why she's my cherished divinity. Because I think ultimately she represents the truth of what I see about the universe, that there is, like a lot of chaos and a lot of darkness in it. But ultimately there is also love, compassion, and understanding. And there is moving past these surface level things to embrace something much deeper. And that, yeah, there's a lot out there that can look really scary, but if we look past the surface level, we'll find that there's actually a lot of beauty to it. I don't know. I just figured I would share those thoughts with you guys. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, and I hope that you liked the video, and hopefully you can leave some comments. Maybe you can leave some comments about like your own divinity stories and stuff like that. Or maybe you can tell me what your favorite fruit is. I love fruit. Tell me what your favorite fruit is. Leave it in the comments. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.